Welcome back to another episode of Geography Now. Today we're going to be looking at Sweden, and you might be asking yourself, why did I pick Sweden? Why are we talking about Sweden? Well, tomorrow on September 11th, 2022, this video is coming out on 10th of September 2022, Sweden is having an election. Who cares? Lots of countries have elections, right? Why did you pick this one in particular to do a reaction video on Sweden? Well, it's going to be a very, very, very interesting election. Now, to give you a little bit of background of Swedish politics, the Social Democrats, so the Social Democracy Party, has been in power in Sweden since roughly 1917. They've had a plurality or a downright majority since then. And as of the polling from August of 2022, it looks like the the Swedish Democrats, which are a relatively new party and are a right-wing sort of populist party, might be moving into the second spot and might be even threatening the hold on power that the Social Democrats have had since 1917. And so because of this fascinating situation that we find ourselves in, I don't know the results. No one does. We'll find out tomorrow. I figured, hey, let's do a video on Sweden, the most, what would you say, maybe the most well-known Nordic country in the world. And yeah, I don't have as much experience with this country. I've spent a lot of time in Finland. I will be doing a Geography Now video on Finland. But hey, let's learn some things about the country. If you haven't yet already, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Sweden. I don't have to give much of an introduction. I'm sure
there you
you've
go.
all heard
Neither
of
do
this
I.
one. We've scaled the treacherous Danish peaks of Møllehøj, stomached the ammonia-flavored Icelandic Hákarl, and our wallets were viciously attacked by Norwegian prices of anything. But now it's time. Welcome to the final boss of Scandinavia, Sweden. Whew, it's hot. I'm all hot and sweaty right now.
You know the drill.
Oh yeah, okay.
Kick it.
Oh yeah, Noah's back, by the way.
Here we are.
Yep.
Okay.
It's time to learn geography.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. Get a Geography Now t-shirt or Geography Now merch at geographynow.com. Not selling out if it's your brand. Anyway, all right, you guys, this is it. Our last Nordic country.
But what about...
Your constituent.
But what about?
You're in unincorporated territory.
But what about me?
We already did your video. I even went there. Okay, anyway, I actually wanted to go to Sweden for this episode. At the last minute, Sweden was like, dude, we're going to close off our borders to anyone outside the EU. But you know how it goes. The show must go on. And if we
Very
can't
topical.
go to Sweden, we're going to bring Sweden to us. And in the best possible way, with real Swedish people. And I mean like real Swedes, not those fifth generation Minnesota Swedes that eat lutefisk once a year. And so with that, say hi to Jonas and Carolina. Come on.
I have to ask one thing. Is that a uniquely American phenomenon where people are like, I'm Swedish, even though, like you said, they're fifth generation Minnesotans or whatnot? That's an experience that I've had in Canada too, where people are like, I'm Scottish, but like their great grandfather immigrated from Scotland and their mother was basically Canadian since then. I don't know. Maybe this is a uniquely American phenomenon. Do people say this? Like, do Germans say like, "Oh, my grandmother was Dutch"? I don't know. Let me know in the comments.
Woo! Yeah! I got two Swedes. So you guys are the real deal. Swedes.
I like how these people look exactly like you would picture Swedish people to look.
Fish, straight up, right?
I was born in
amazing.
Sweden and lived there for 10 years, and then my mom moved me to the enemy, to Norway.
Oh, so you're half
Yeah.
Norwegian. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm from Skåne, so we might have some angry people out there claiming I'm Danish, but
It was LA. You guys were the best I could find. So anything you want to say to the Swedish subscribers?
Now I'm excited for you guys to learn more about your country. Our country.
By the way, where are you guys from?
There you go.
I'm from
This
Helsingborg.
is the
I'm
important part.
from Skellefteå.
Now, there are many ways you can divide Europe. You know, like you have the Mediterranean. Tomato for sale, tomato. The post-Iron Curtain. The Balkans. But everyone knows the further north you go, things start to get delicious and sweet.
anyway, lots to cover. Let's look at the globe.
Sweden lies in the region of Scandinavia in Northern Europe and is the largest of all the Scandinavian countries, the fifth largest in Europe, and
By quite a
third in
bit, too, I
EU.
think.
The country is bordered by Norway to the west and north, and Finland in the northeast, separated by the Gulf of Bothnia otherwise between them. In this gulf, you can also find Sweden's two largest islands, Öland and Gotland. Otherwise in the south, the only other physical connection they technically have is with Denmark via the partially submerged and partially above ground Öresund Bridge that connects Malmö, the third largest largest city to Copenhagen. I'm trying my best with these pronunciations.
I always want to go over that bridge. One of these days I will.
The country's largest city, though, and capital is Stockholm, located on the east side of the country, and it actually sits on 14 islands with over 50 bridges at the drainage of Lake Mälaren, with over 20 lakes and countless streams. This is why it is sometimes referred to as the Venice of the North. The country is divided into 21 counties, each abbreviated by a letter or double letter known as a country code. For the EU statistical system, though, the counties are grouped into 8 riksområden, or national areas, to address things like population data and so forth, but they in themselves do not have any administrative function. Otherwise, if you ask a Swede, they might revert back to the 3 traditional lands of Sweden: Norrland, Svealand, and Götaland. Technically, there was a fourth, Österland, which was basically South Finland when it was under Swedish rule, but that term hasn't been used since the 15th century. Anyway, stop.
Yeah, and so here I can talk about Finland. I can talk about something I know. Finns, again, generally not every Finn, of course, but overall, sort of consider Sweden to be the mother country. Right? Finland was a duchy of the Russian Empire, and then before then it was sort of I don't know if it was a duchy, but it was sort of a puppet state kind of the Swedish Empire as well. And so in this area here, I think this is Åland. Don't kill me in the comments. I think this is Åland. Lives a lot of Finsvensk people, so people that are Finnish by nationality but sort of Swedish by heritage. And there are a lot of Swedes here, right? The 2 official languages of Finland are Finnish and Swedish, and every person that goes to school in Finland has to learn Swedish as well. So there are tons of ties. Maybe they'll talk about this in the video. I might be totally repeating myself or repeating what they're going to say in 5 minutes. But yeah, there is a lot of Swedes in Finland, and there still is that influence. There's actually a separate political party that's meant to, what would you say, sort of lobby in the interests of Swedish-speaking people in Finland to this day.
Stockholm is also the central hub of economic activity and transportation. The largest and busiest airport is Stockholm's Arlanda International, which, like so many European international airports, is located super far from the actual city. It takes a 20-minute express train or 45-minute car drive to downtown. The second largest airport, Landvetter International, is located in the second largest city, Göteborg, or Gothenburg for the misguided English speakers. Göteborg actually also has the largest shipping port in the country and the largest of all of Scandinavia, taking in about a third of all Swedish trade activity. It lies on the Kattegat and Skagerrak, the shallow straits that open up Scandinavia to the rest of the world. With other major cities like Oslo and Copenhagen within radius, here about 70% of all industry and commerce through Scandinavia happens. It's a busy spot to say the least. Finally, the country has quite an organized system of roads and rail networks that more or less parallel each other. There are 2 main north-south highways, the E4 that hugs the entire Bothnia coast, and the E45, the longest road in the country that goes along the mountains inland from Göteborg all the way to the border with Finland in the north.
Also, it's important to note that Sweden claims to have the most islands out of any other country in the world, at over 260,000.
In any case, Sweden's domain wasn't always confined to these borders.
For starters, Sweden, being Scandinavian, obviously have Viking history. If you know anything about Vikings, you'll know that they went places.
They were literally in the Americas 500 years before Christopher Columbus.
And when they couldn't...
In modern day Newfoundland is where they were originally landed, and so those are the first, if you will, settlers, obviously after the ice bridge broke, of North America.
Conquer an area, they still left their mark somehow. Even the Hagia Sophia in Turkey has runic inscriptions hidden on it.
It was like Viking graffiti, like Vikings were here.
On top of that, in the 1600s, Sweden started to become a European powerhouse, and like many other countries, took an attempt at settling and colonizing places outside of Europe.
At one point, Sweden had fortresses and colonies in the Americas, Africa, mostly in what now is Ghana.
Further, which it's more, within Sweden, you even have a few micronations.
We don't have time to get into each of them, but they're pretty interesting. One of them was made as a protest by an artist to protect those wooden sculptures.
Anyway, the developmental structure behind Sweden has a lot of history behind it.
Like Visby on Gotland Island, probably the best preserved medieval city in Scandinavia.
The Old Town Stockholm neighborhood of Gamla Stan was built as a fortress to protect against pirates.
Later on, one of your kings would actually become a pirate, but that's another story. In fact, the country has 15 UNESCO heritage sites, and actually here's fellow geography Rebecca to explain a little bit more about the top notable sites of Sweden. Rebecca, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca, and if you're ever in Sweden, here are some of the most notable sites. There are plenty of notable castles, fortresses, and cathedrals, such as Drottningholm Castle, Gripsholm Castle,
kind of looks like Schoenbrunn in Wien.
Visby Town Wall, Uppsala Cathedral, and St. Mary's Cathedral. Sweden also has...
But where are all these? Sweden's a massive country, so like are all those in the same region?
The highest concentration of runestones in the world, with the most famous one being Rökstenen. There's also many historical Viking sites, such as Birka Viking Village, Trelleborgen, Old Uppsala, and Alestenar. If you're looking for more excitement, check out the theme parks Liseberg, Gröna Lund, and Skara Sommarland.
Where are all these?
Museums in Sweden are the Vasa Museum, ABBA Museum,
That's in Stockholm.
Fotografiska, and the Museum of Natural History.
I think that's in Stockholm,
In Stockholm,
too.
you can find the newly renamed Avicii Arena. It also acts as the sun in the largest
Rest in
scale
peace, by the
model
way.
of our solar system. Thank you, and I hope you come to visit Sweden someday.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Speaking of Swedish places, like other Nordic countries, we have allemansrätten, which is the legal right to roam anywhere
that's
in
cool.
nature.
Have you guys ever taken advantage of that Allemansrätten thing?
Nice.
I mean, you just like pick berries and like, hey.
Yeah, I mean, most places are owned by the country, so you're allowed to be there.
Can you just like walk in someone's backyard and be like, hey,
No.
Allemansrätten?
No. It has to be
Preferably
public
not.
land.
Well, speaking of roaming in nature, there's lots to explore in Sweden, which brings us to... Now, in the Nordics, each country kind of has their own trademark physical trait.
You know, Norway has the mountains and fjords.
Denmark has the flat grassy farms,
Finland is the land of lakes.
and Iceland is basically just one big volcano.
And then you get to Sweden,
Iceland is beautiful, by the way. If you ever get the chance to go there,
and there's
amazing.
like a little bit of everything.
Even though over-tourism is a massive problem in Iceland, but I digress.
Yes, there's even a small sand volcano in Simishamn.
Sweden lies on the Scandinavian peninsula of northern Europe, shared with Norway on the east side of the Scandinavian mountain chain that separates them. Here
Yes.
you can also find the tallest
And that's the key thing, is that Finland is not a part... I'm gonna talk about more about Finland than Sweden in this episode. I know I am. Finland is not a part of Scandinavia. It's very often confused.
peak, Kebnekaise.
It's
in the
only
far
two
north.
countries,
This
Norway
means that Sweden gets
and
most
Sweden.
of its river runoff from the mountains that mostly flow down into the Gulf of Bothnia, and the longest river shared with Finland being the Torne or Tornio River. The longest river fully within Sweden, though, being the Dalälven River. Amongst these rivers is an abundance of lakes and ponds peppering the flatter hilly valleys below, the largest of these lakes being Värnen and Vättern in the south. The reason Sweden has so many of these pockety lake zones and eroded rivets is because they sit on a post-glacial rebound zone. Basically, during the Ice Age, all
Cool.
this land was crushed by heavy ice. But after the ice melt, like a sponge, Sweden started to slowly spring back up again. This means every year Sweden recovers on average about 4 millimeters of land from the sea. In some
Really?
places, even
That's
more. This
fascinating.
is why you might see extended piers from old homes that once used to be situated on the shore. The country has
Cool.
4 general climate zones: the oceanic zone in the south by the Baltic Sea. This is also where most of the agriculture is situated. The continental zone is in the middle part of the country. And finally, the subarctic in the north, just above that. These areas have the highest forest concentration in the country. Also, the peaks of the mountains are classified as tundra. The top 15% of Sweden lies just north of the Arctic Circle, where the coldest temperatures and highest snowfall happens.
Yeah, because like most of this is Lapland, right? I don't know exactly where Lapland starts. Maybe
Otherwise,
let's
in
get
the
into
south,
that
you
in a
might
sec.
not even get any snow at all in the winter. Just cold, depressing rain. Numbers fluctuate depending on which source you study, but somewhere around or above 60% of the country is forested, making it the second most forested
Reminds me
country
a lot
in
of
Europe
Canada.
after Finland.
It's also important to note that Sweden has aprilväder, or April weather, in which,
It's pretty crazy.
yeah.
Pretty much anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sun is
Same
finally
thing in-
out
in
after
Toronto.
6 months of darkness. So
Not as-
close
not
them
the same
off.
as Toronto,
We sit in
never
the
mind.
sun. Oh, whenever you see a Swede 2, expect this. Facing the sun, eyes closed, and then all of a sudden a storm hits, or snow comes, or
Out of nowhere.
yeah.
I don't know where.
The interesting thing, though, is that Sweden in the past was kind of not much like what they are today. In fact, at the beginning of the 20th century, much of Scandinavia was struggling with widespread poverty.
However, much like Germany's Wirtschaftswunder, they had the Rekordåren, in which Sweden's economy bursted with now industries and innovation.
And today you have the largest.
Talk about the Wirtschaftswunder in another video, but yeah. So one of the interesting things is that post World War One, I'm going to get into this on one of the first original contents that's coming out on this channel about authoritarianism and democracy post World War One. But the Scandinavian countries were actually an outlier in the fact that post World War One, instead of moving to the right or moving to the left, which most of the countries actually moved much more to the far right and moved more to authoritarianism, Sweden actually doubled down on social democracy, right? And sort of created the modern welfare state that we understand to this day. And this was done through a lot of political cooperation between the major parties, in Sweden's case, the Riksdag, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, as well as in Denmark's parliament and in the newly founded Finland. So yeah, Sweden and the overall Nordics overall were sort of an exemption to what happened in the post-World War I sort of overall misery that was going on in Europe at the time.
Largest economy and most powerful nation in Northern Europe.
To explain a little bit more on the way Sweden takes what it has and flourishes, here's Noah. He's back!
Well, here we are.
Hi,
Once
Noah.
again, let's get to it. Despite having lush green lands, only about 7% of the country is arable. Therefore, agriculture isn't exactly their main focus. Today, much of Sweden's open market economy is heavily based on exports, especially in the timber and mining sectors. The largest mine in Kiruna is actually so large they are currently in the process of moving the town and residents to make more mines.
So I actually did a Swedish political test to see which party I would have voted for. It turns out I would have voted for the Liberal Party. But that was one of the questions where it's like, it was something about moving towns and mines and something like this. So I guess this is a hot topic in Sweden. If you're Swedish and watching this, let me know in the comments below. I'd like to know more about that.
This is how Sweden in the 21st century became the world's 6th largest iron ore exporter and 3rd largest stainless steel exporter. And of course, lumber. The Swedes love trees so much that a long time ago during famine times, they would put crushed tree bark into their rye bread, which was actually good because the bark had lots of minerals and fiber. Go figure. The lumber industry plays a huge role in their world-renowned furniture commerce. We've all heard of IKEA having over 450 stores in about 60 countries. IKEA. They actually studied that in design school.
Is that true, Noah?
That is true. Not that I do it, but here we are. You might be familiar with other Swedish companies like Electrolux, Ericsson, H&M, Saab, Scania, Spotify, and of course the largest domestic company and only one on the Fortune 500 list, Volvo. Great cars, I might say. And that is
Safest cars.
That is that. Until we meet again.
Thank you, Noah.
Now, going off of business talk, domestically, Sweden does have a pretty complex system when it comes to taxes that plays into their fiscal structure.
As of 2021, their individual tax rates range from about 32% to 52% based on income bracket
52%.
margins. And that's not even including other factors like corporate value-added taxes, which can be up to 25%.
When you add them, you get the second highest total tax revenue behind Denmark as a share of its country's income.
Yeah, that's you guys kind of have high taxes.
Well, we also have healthcare.
And good schools.
And good roads.
We get free food, roads.
Roads. In any case,
Classic
another interesting
American.
thing about Sweden is its wildlife. And with that, here's Gary Harlow to explain.
Guess who's back? As a Nordic country, Sweden is obviously a place full of cold climate animals. In fact, they have the 3rd highest number of their national animal, the moose, or the Eurasian elk, after Russia and Canada. There's so many moose that they actually have to hunt around 100,000 every year to maintain population control. Killing your national animal because there's too many? Go Sweden! There are
100,000? Wow.
30 national parks and nature prediction zones, and the most famous being in the North Lapland areas where reindeer, muskox, grey owls and brown bears can be spotted roaming freely. Fun fact, reindeer have climate adapted feet in the summer. Their spongy foot pads are more exposed, which help with traction. But in winter, the pads shrink and the hoof is exposed, which helps cut into the ice when moving. Finally, Sweden is one of the few
I can't tell if this guy's accent is real or not. Like it sounds...
The mouth used to be open for visitors to walk into, but it was closed off to the public because a couple was caught having sex in it. Speaking of making babies, I made one myself. Here's a photo of my daughter. She's beautiful.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, I remember the first meal I had in Sweden was reindeer meatballs. You guys love your reindeer. What's your favorite dishes in Sweden?
I couldn't get it in Finland. I was so upset.
It probably is reindeer meatballs. Yeah.
I would say salmon. Grilled in the summer, oven baked in the winter.
Oh yeah, and you guys know fika, right? Yeah, fika. It's funny because coffee was actually banned from Sweden like 5 times in the 1700s, but that's another story. To explain a little bit more about fika and the food, here's Johan and Rikard. All right, guys, well, this is fika, and to explain, here is Johan.
So, in Sweden, fika is a huge tradition. It's something you do daily. It's a part of a workday break where you kind of like gather, you sit down, and you have coffee. Historically, it's been that 7 types of cookies minimum, plus cinnamon rolls and cardamom rolls, and then pastries such as princess cakes and other things. Every day, but not necessarily this many sorts.
I was gonna
want
say.
to give you a cross section of what it could be. So, and then the most famous on the bottom would be the princess cake.
So if I'm gonna try some, I have to have some marzipan. So many layers.
I know.
Wow.
And
Hello there, my name is Dick and I'm here to talk about some of the foods.
Man, Geography Now has got totally from the Germany video, which I did a reaction to. Like, this is so
We
different.
have kroppkakor or
So many
pub,
guests.
depending on if you are from the north or the south. Sill, or as you will call it, herring. We have reindeer, pea soup, cauliflower soup, surströmming.
Oh yeah, that stuff. That's like 9 billion reaction videos of person tries surströmming, and apparently it smells very bad.
Or sour herring, but eat at your own risk.
Yep.
All of these foods can be eaten at the traditional smörgåsbord, or smörgåsbord, basically a Swedish buffet. We also have
Smörgåsbord.
Kalles or Charles caviar. It's a Swedish style of smoked cod roe, not that super
It's in a tube.
expensive. And of
Oh, that's
course we
great.
have knäckebröd! And the traditional national dish of Sweden, Swedish tacos. Over to some drinks from Sweden. We have akvavit, or flavored caraway liquor. Julmust on Christmas, and påskmust on Easter. Glögg. We have glögg.
Glögg.
And of course my personal favorite,
Mine's with
punch.
Glühwein.
It's made by the mixing of spirits like arak, brandy or rum
Ah,
with
punch.
arak tea with some sugar.
Genauso
and
wie auf
water.
Deutsch.
Very sweet, very strong, and very nice.
Thank you, Johan and Rika. Oh yeah, you guys also have something about like the alcohol in Sweden. Can you guys explain what is that?
It's called the Systembolaget, which is like the Swedish system of selling heavily regulated alcohol at state-owned stores at set prices.
So you can be 18 and go to a bar to get liquor, but you can't buy it at a store until
No.
you're 20.
Correct.
Logic.
Kind of like Canada, where it varies on your province, but in Ontario you have the beer store, original name, I know, and then you have the LCBO, which stands for the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. And up until 2015, these were the only places that you could buy alcohol.
Logic.
Stupid.
The way it goes is that Norwegian people go to Sweden to buy alcohol, Swedish people go to Denmark to buy alcohol, and Danish people go to Germany to buy alcohol.
You guys all have a
Nice.
system.
Yeah, we have a
Big
system
fan.
for
Nice.
cheap alcohol.
So there's probably a bunch of 16-year-olds taking a ferry over to Denmark.
The ferry itself is a party.
I've been on that ferry. I've been on that ferry with my mom between Helsingborg and Helsingør. Oh, and a funny story,
Yep.
I was told when potatoes were introduced to Sweden.
That's like, apparently that's like a thing to do for like their prom for Finns, is to take the boat over to Sweden, then you party all night on the boat and then go from there.
And it was kind of like this. What are these things?
Well, obviously, liquor.
And that's how Aquavit was born, supposedly. Oh, and what's that thing about candy on Saturdays? Explain, Carolina.
Lördagsgodis. You get to eat candy on Saturdays. So when we were kids, we got a little amount of money. We got to run to the store and pick our favorite candy. It's amazing. Best in the world. I mean, yes, good ingredients. When you come here, pretty much half the ingredients of American candy is illegal in Sweden. So.
Yeah, we do that. Well, on that note, we've talked a lot about some of your small little traditions. Let's explain a little bit more in...
Because I wonder, like, how many of these traditions
I asked
still
Geography Johan to explain
continue?
Swedish people and what they're like, and he described it something like this. A Swedish person is pretty reserved. They will definitely help you, but probably won't take the immediate initiative to help you. The way I see it, it's kind of like, oh
Okay.
no, I hope I don't fall. Oh, I'm falling. Oh, and I dropped my wallet, and I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
That's a solid The Room reference. That's worthy of a like, by the
Oh, I'm
way.
sorry. Was I supposed to help you?
Yeah,
Oh my God. Yeah. Here's.
Also, what are some other kind of taboos in Swedish culture? What do you think?
I guess when you get on the bus, if there is another available seat and you go sit next to someone, don't do that. Just don't.
And don't have too much eye contact in general.
Is it like that anywhere? Like anywhere in the world? Is that a normal thing? Maybe it is in your country. I don't know.
Probably none.
Explain, what is logom and jantelo?
It's a law that basically tells you that don't think you're better than anyone. It's like, don't tell people that you got good
law?
grades. Just get them and move on.
But still, you know, kind of let them see it on you.
Yeah, it's definitely based on status.
Lagom is this word that does not exist in English, and it basically means not too much, not too little, just the perfect amount. I would say that a Swedish person is generally intelligent. Is that full enough?
Okay.
It's just a result of our
Okay, I guess
That's
all
right.
10 million of them.
Jantelo, you're not allowed to do that, right?
Well, we're not allowed to brag, no, but now we're in America, so.
Well, that was a discussion.
I always hate these like, stupid, whatever.
Any case, let's break down the population of Sweden.
Sweden has a population of about 10.25 million and has one of the oldest populations in the world at about 41 years of age on average. About 75% of the country claims to be
that would explain the
Swedish,
immigration.
and this is where things get a little complicated. For the remaining 25%, the Swedish government doesn't have any official statistical data on foreign background, but what we do know is that of these people, about 2 million of them were born abroad, and about 600,000 were born in Sweden as second generation with foreign parents. We also know that as of 2020, due to the refugee crisis, the largest immigrant communities had origins mostly from Syria and Iraq, which surpassed Finland and Poland in the 21st century for the largest foreign-born communities.
Yeah, we'll talk about the refugee thing later. But in the meantime,
Sweden uses the Swedish krona as its currency.
And we use the
I think it's like 10 to 1 for euro.
plug outlets, and we drive on the right side of the road. But we used to drive on the left side until September 3rd, 1967.
Famous photo, by the way.
When the högertrafiksomläggningen was instituted.
and it was a crazy time. People were all confused and jamming into each other. In Sweden,
Yeah, but it was only for one morning. After like, if you see an hour, I think that was taken at like 7 o'clock in the morning, that first photo. And then by 10 a.m. or so, it's fine. Everyone cleared up. It was only really the morning that everything was all screwed up.
the official language is, shocker, Swedish.
But the funny thing is, even though Swedish originated and has pretty much always been spoken natively in Sweden, Swedish actually only became official in the country in 2009.
Yeah, they kept kind of arguing about it. It was like,
No, it might be seen as more difficult for international issues. It might be seen as discriminatory, maybe, for those who don't speak Swedish. God!
So let's break this down. The country is called Sweden. What the do you think people should speak in Sweden?
And that's how Swedish
English.
became the official language of Sweden.
No.
we've explained this before, but the three Scandinavian countries can all more or less understand each other. If you learn one, you can
Yeah.
pretty much kind of communicate with the others. It's just, you know, when they hear Danish, it's like,
Oh, hey, Denmark. Interesting.
Yeah. This is the joke that Danish sounds like you have a hot potato in your throat at all times.
And the interesting thing is that the Swedish language has pitches.
here's geography Marcus to explain a little bit more.
So yeah, Swedish is a very hard language to learn. We also have pitch dialects.
Is it?
Some words
Really?
look and are pronounced exactly the same, but have different meanings. So the word plan, it can mean a plan, like having a great plan. It can also mean pitch, like a football pitch. Football's plan. Banan, which means banana, but if you pronounce it banan, it means the
Banan.
track.
Thank you, Marcus.
In any case,
I don't know. Like, I think for an English speaker, Swedish would probably want to be the easier languages to learn, no? Like, I would imagine, like, I tried my hand at learning Finnish, and yeah, it's much easier to learn Swedish. But maybe I'm biased, though, because I also know German, so yeah, maybe that's sort of biasing me.
on top of that, there are also 5 protected languages in Sweden. Finnish, Menkal, Sami, Romani,
Sami, yeah.
Yiddish.
Mhm.
Also, Sweden has a lot of regional
Yiddish.
accents.
If she spoke her native language right now, or
You don't even say dialect, you say language.
native
Yeah.
dialect, I wouldn't understand a word.
Say the most difficult southern Swedish thing you can say.
Okay, this is not my accent, okay? Disclaimer. Det är nämnt men tradigt och köra rulleball.
It is easy but difficult to
Det är nämnt min tradik kyröleball.
drive a roller coaster.
That's my attempt.
Wheelbarrow, but that was really good.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
You thought wheelbarrow was roller coaster. Whoa! In any case, Christianity was introduced in the 9th century. Today, most Swedes, regardless of their level of religious devotion
Lutheran.
or lack thereof, are at least
Interesting.
registered with the Swedish Lutheran Church.
And like the Danes and Norwegians, they have their confirmation ceremonies at age 14 or 15.
In old times, ancient Swedes and the Norse people followed the Asatru religion, you know, where Thor, Odin, Loki, all of them were from.
Otherwise, Sweden is a constitutional monarchy. Although there
Yeah, so there's one.
are mostly
Actually, wait, I'll let her
seen as just
finish.
figurehead celebrities with almost no actual legislative power.
And today, the royal family is actually French descended.
For what it's worth, being the largest
Yeah, and so the other interesting thing too is that I think it's either the king of Norway or the king of Sweden, but you can vinish, that's a new word. You can visit, there we go. You can visit their palace, and they actually still live in it. So it's like, you know, you can, yeah, there's certain times that you can't go into certain rooms because he'll be having breakfast or whatever. So
Just
yeah.
of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden has a lot on its plate.
In general, most people would say that the system works. Yes, we do have one of the highest life expectancies in the world at over 82 years.
People get paid to go to schools they are accepted in.
Healthcare is...
Yeah, so this reminds me of this old thing called participation in Canada, which was basically a federal, what would you say, exercise imperative. And there was this campaign called the Old Swede, where a 60, or maybe it was a 70-year-old Swede was healthier than the average Canadian. And this was like done in the 90s or whatever. And so like my parents' generation and maybe Gen X and whatnot remember the sort of Old Swede campaigns to convince Canadians to become more healthy. The campaign didn't really work in the end.
free for people under 18. Dental is free for anyone under 23.
Otherwise, there are
Yikes.
price caps for medical and pharmaceutical services, and they are usually cheap.
However, for the population, there is a bit of a shortage in medical facilities, and like most state-subsidized healthcare systems, wait times can be an issue sometimes, and they follow the 0-30-90-90 rule. This rule states that a person cannot wait more than 90 days to see a specialist and 90 days after diagnosis to receive surgery unless it is deemed an emergency. This means that the worst case scenario, potentially, it could take almost half a year to get treated.
This is one reason why 1 out of 10 Swedes actually prefer private insurance, which was, made available in 2010 rather than relying on universal healthcare system.
Otherwise, we aren't going to fully sugarcoat this episode. Everyone knows that Sweden has seen quite a few drastic changes in the past decade or so. During the 2014-15 refugee crisis, Sweden saw a wave of asylum seekers, mostly from Syria and Iraq.
Obviously, this unexpected influx in such a short time, barely allowing the new immigrants time to integrate, kind of played out in many ways that made international news.
Now, this is where the narrative kind of steps on thin ice because
This is the
you want
interesting
to be
part.
seen as compassionate, but you also can't avoid the fact that statistically, problems that quiet Sweden had never really seen before obviously kind of started to arise. We've seen the news features, riots, multiple cities, crime rising, but at the same time, you also want to be seen as compassionate, but without sidestepping the issues. So the question was, how?
Well, it's not an easy question to answer.
So I don't know, what do you guys think of that whole situation of the drama?
You can see it as either win-win or lose-lose in many ways, because if you're completely against taking in immigrants, you're basically considered a racist. And if you're trying to turn a blind eye to the fact that crime has risen a lot the last years, then that's not great either. So I think this is a fairly new problem, and it takes some time to really figure it out.
So here's one interesting thing. So as of recording this today, there was an AMA with Jimmy Åkesson, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, and he's the leader of the Swedish Democrats, so they're the sort of populist right-wing party. And what was interesting is that a lot of the responses on this AMA, and I didn't read the whole thing, so there's definitely some questions in there that I missed, that his responses, though they were typically on the right side of the political spectrum, had more upvotes than the sort of gotcha Reddit AMA questions that were trying to be forced on them. One was about radio technology and like defunding radio stations that primarily immigrants listen to and other things like this. So what I find fascinating is like, where do young people sit on this particular issue right now that it's taken a few years? It's 2022 now, right? This crisis happened in 2015. So now that the sort of, what would you say, lean towards compassion is over and the hard realities of politics are now more involved, considering it's been 7 years, I'm curious maybe where you sit on it personally, either as a Swede or someone who isn't a Swede.
Difficult.
And kind of a discussion of how to help people, integrate into the society in general.
Swedish society.
I think integration is keyword.
Yeah.
Half the people are gonna argue for all the benefits of opening our country up and helping people, and those are huge as well.
Yeah. See, this is kind of part of the complication of Sweden. There's always like a dichotomy of ethics and consequences within their story. For example, they've been neutral, or at least on paper, for 200 years, yet that neutrality
Not
has
anymore.
always kind of been tested throughout the time.
In World War I, our choice not to intervene pretty much costed us the chance to integrate the Åland Islands.
And in World War II, Sweden took like almost all of Denmark's Jewish refugees. However, they did trade with Nazi Germany
Yes.
Uh,
and let them use the railroad.
But it's like, what other choice did they have when
Plus, they also had espionage operations that they used for the Allies. Sweden was a very, very interesting place in World War II, and maybe I'll do a video on that in and of itself.
they just witnessed and saw Denmark getting demolished and attacked and occupied in like 6 hours? It's like, do you stay
Well, they didn't really get demolished. They walked into Copenhagen unopposed, but I digress.
neutral yet technically cooperate, or fight back with no chance and lose everything? So many heavy choices with no simple answers. Well, that was fantastic and uplifting.
In any case, we must move on. One thing Sweden definitely does actually feel uplifted by would be their heavy involvement in sports.
And with that, Art usually fills in for the sports part, but again, he's still on vacation with his family, so I don't know. Noah, why don't you fill in? All right, Noah, you got to be Art this time. He's gone, so you know.
No, you missed the do, and you go too.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Sports in Sweden. Fun fact, they actually won a half medal at the 1900 Olympics, technically. They teamed up with Denmark in the tug-of-war event. Yes, there actually used to be a tug-of-war event in the Olympics. Which does
we need some of these back.
Why
we need like clay shooting back in the Olympics, or ping pong.
Your own team, Noah.
There are two sports that kind of originated in Sweden, brandball and floorball. Brandball is kind of like baseball, and floorball is basically like hockey with a ball on the floor. So you think about Sweden.
Yeah, but like look at the sticks and it's played with a wiffle ball.
Is that each of their neighbors is kind of like their biggest rivals in a certain sport. And of course, we can't mention football without mentioning their biggest player, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But depending on who you ask, many people might say that ice hockey is the national sport.
Is that Matt Sundin?
In 2006, they became the first and so far only team to win both tournaments in the same calendar year, Olympics and World Championships. They're part of the Big Six that are considered the best ice hockey teams in the world, including Canada, Czechia, Finland, Russia, and the United States. Yep. That's the sports parts.
Thank you, Noah. So much culture in Sweden. Actually, if you want to learn more about it, just read The Adventure.
Yeah, this year, the World Juniors, by the way, Sweden did not very good.
Of Niels. He rides a goose around Sweden and learns some life lessons along the way or something.
With that, here's Random Hannah with culture stuff.
Hey guys, I'm back. Woo! In Sweden, you'll find that every region has its unique identity. For example, the Sami people of Lapland in the north, they have their reindeer herding, tents, and colt or yakti clothing. If you go to the south in Skåne, though, you'll find a radically different culture of glass blowing and silversmithing, stuff like that. Of course, we don't have time to dive into all the regions, but one thing you'll realize is that they all have a traditional costume or folkdräkter. One thing you will see all over Sweden is a typical redwood farmhouse. They also have the Dalahäst, a wooden horse usually painted red with patterns. And speaking of iconic animals, Swedes actually love Donald Duck, even more than Mickey Mouse. And every year during Christmas, they show Donald Duck and his friends wish you a Merry Christmas on the TV. Sweden also has...
Yeah, and this is one thing I saw in Finland, is like there's Donald Duck cartoons in every checkout at the grocery store. I really got to do a video on Finland, but hey, I digress. And one thing I want to talk about the Sami people too. I don't know the history with Sweden in particular, but I know that they've, at least for Finland, have experienced a lot of discrimination in the past, and yeah, it's still a topic that's ongoing and has a lot of interesting history to it.
Many notable individuals in the arts and literature department. And probably the most critically well known is Anders Zorn, who is commissioned to paint numerous high-profile figures. Swedes are known for their crime, fiction, drama, and literature. They love the complex, moody scenarios. Many people attribute this guy, I'm not even going to try and say his name, as the founder of modern Scandinavian crime fiction. But the #1 best-selling Swedish author of all time is actually Astrid Lindgren. You've probably heard of her Pippi Longstocking series.
Yes.
And speaking of consumable media, if you want to learn about culture, history, and geography through film, check out Filmography Now, where we talk about people like Ingmar Bergman, who is a huge influential person in the film industry, and he was from Sweden. Finally, Sweden is known for having a
I think he was on the currency at one point. Like there was a special bill that was released for him.
Inventions and discoveries, such as nicotine gum, the pacemaker, the 3-point seatbelt, GPS, the ultrasound, dynamite, and the Celsius temperature scale. And 4 elements on the periodic table were named after the town Ytterby. I give up, guys. Too many strange vowels and sounds. And one thing you should give up on is Keith and his music segment. Take it away, Keith.
Wow, so we're finally talking about this country that I have totally not any sort of bias towards. Oh wait, hold on, I think I'm forgetting something. I hope everybody recognizes my favorite Swedish band right here. Let's talk about Sweden.
I thought black metal was more Finland's thing.
Technically, Sweden doesn't have a national anthem. So they have this one song. It's called Du Gamma Du Fria. I guess it's the de facto anthem, but not the official one. There's tons of really great Swedish folk songs accompanied by the Swedish nickel harp. Kind of looks like a keyboard mixed with a violin. Who likes Strandberg guitars? I do. Just so many great guitar players. Per Nelson, greatest guitar player I think out of Sweden. Sweden. There's also Yngwie Malmsteen, Ola
Oh, he's Swedish. Oh, I didn't know that.
Ogland, Michael Ackerfeld. I don't understand why Scandinavia has produced some of the world's greatest guitar players. Anyways, Sweden has also a very pop-centric side. Who doesn't know ABBA? I Want to Be
And they
a
do well at
Dancing
Eurovision
Queen.
all the
ABBA
time.
won in 1974 for the Eurovision contest. Also, now ABBA's actually going to be making a new album after doing 40 years of basically nothing. Since then, Sweden has been kind of the pioneers of like electro pop and dance music. More well-known artists might be like Avicii, the Carnegans, Swedish House Mafia, Roxette. Funny thing is, there's a lot of American pop songs were written by Swedes. Max Martin has hundreds of songs. Before I get
fascinating music career, by the way.
Some of the bands that I really do enjoy are Opeth, Meshuggah, Pain of Salvation, Sabaton. There's Beardfish.
Every
I wish
Hoi4
I could
player will
name them
know
all.
who
Anyways,
Sabaton
you guys
is.
have a great one. Love y'all.
Thank you, Keith. Any music suggestions for Swedish music?
Robin. She's a great musician.
Benjamin Ingrosso is killing it.
Well, speaking of which, Carolina is
Axel
a musician
Ingrosso,
and,
right?
an artist, and you can follow her Spotify at this link right here.
No.
I will promote it. I will promote your Spotify. Don't be all Logum or Yantalo and whatever that is on me. You got to promote yourself. This is America.
So far released 3 Swedish songs, 1 English one.
You want to promote anything? You have a website? Anything?
No.
You were in a Norwegian movie and it got an Emmy Award.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your music has touched the world in so many ways. And another way Sweden has made its name across the world is by interacting with it. So let's move on to the friend zone.
Everyone? I know.
Now Sweden has an interesting way of dealing with the
Sweden kind of supported-ish the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War.
rest of the world.
They kind of have a hands-off, unless
Let's see if they talk about
necessary approach to international conflict.
For one, their security doctrine states that they have a nonpartisan stance in regards to military alliances. However, it permits cooperation with threats against peace security with their military.
Good job, Putin.
As a military. Nonetheless,
Great job.
they joined the EU in 1995, which some criticized as being against neutrality, but Sweden decided to see it as
Austria
an
has the same
extension
issue,
of economic activity that had already been going on with the EU, and they also hold the right to not participate in EU defense. Today, they have 79 embassies abroad on all inhabited continents. In Asia, Iraq actually has had relations way before conflict years, dating back to the 30s, when members of the royal family visited Baghdad to see King Ghazi of Iraq. In the 80s, Swedish companies opened up in Iraq, trade was developing well for a while, and after conflict years, many Iraqis chose Sweden as their destination as refugees. The USA and Canada have always been close, as the US has the largest Swedish diaspora community at over 4 million people, most heavily concentrated in Minnesota. Canada having just
like
about
Germans
half a
too, I
million,
think.
with a huge community in Manitoba. Between 1820 to 1930, about 1.3 million Swedes immigrated to the Americas, which was at that time about 1/3 of the entire country. And today, these nations not only had a close historical bond, but in almost every diplomatic measure aside from military conflict, they've cooperated. Bringing it closer to home, Sweden is actually one of the top donors of Moldova in regards to aid and development. They set a strategy of cooperation in 2007, which gives 11 million euros dedicated to good governance, economy, and rural development. Now we go even closer to the inner circle, the Nordics. Every single one of these 5 nations and their territories has an opinion about Sweden, and the gossip is heavy. Finland is, of course, really close, as for about 600 years they were actually a part of Sweden.
But they always want to beat them in sports.
Today, Finns are one of the largest non-Swedish communities with a protected language in pockets throughout the country. For Iceland, it's like, we're cool with them, nothing against them. They talk like our ancient Norse ancestors, but otherwise, they're totally our distant cousins. Then we get to the last two, Denmark and Norway. Now here's the thing, each one kind of has a small historical gripe with Sweden. Denmark, as you know, has had more wars with Sweden than any 2 nations on Earth, constantly fighting over influence for Northern Europe. Norway was kind of pissed that Sweden's neutrality prevented them from intervening in war
and they
times.
separated
They thought the Swedish
in the
were like
1890s,
really close, and
1910s, correct me
Norway
if I'm
was
wrong.
even part of Sweden. This was especially evident in World War II.
I like how they showed a picture of Finland and Sweden.
It was like the moment of tension. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, you cannot separate the Scandinavian trio. They just get
When did Norway and Sweden separate?
each other too well.
Let me know
They
in the
share
comments.
too much. They have the same general Scandinavian minds. They have that Viking blood. They are truly people of the North. After the insults have been hurled, they will probably say, okay, yeah, we love each other. Denmark and Sweden, though, will probably first hug Norway before hugging each other. But otherwise, yeah, inseparable trio.
All right, and in conclusion, you are the Swedes. I'm going to step out, hold the flag in the background while you speak freely from the heart.
I want to say in conclusion, Sweden is a beautiful country with beautiful nature, beautiful architecture, if we haven't mentioned that just yet.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, if you meet a Swedish person, he or she might be a little I'm not sure about you, but lead on with a smile and some love, and you'll get the exact same back, I promise you.
I like that. That was good. All right, well, thank you guys so much for being in this episode.
Thank you.
And stay tuned. Switzerland is coming up next.
Nice, fantastic. Well, I think I need to do a video on Finland for sure because I have way more experience with Finns. But hey, I digress. Maybe I'm going to do Austria and maybe I'll do Switzerland as well. We'll see. Hope you guys liked this episode. It was a little bit of a different one. This video was super long. Sorry about that, but hope you enjoyed. I learned something about Sweden. Hope you guys did too. And yeah, let's see who wins the election tomorrow and how that is going to have consequences for Swedish society. I wish this one went into a little bit more into politics. Okay, can only do so much. Thank you all very much for joining me. If you haven't already, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.